Southern Fried True Crime covers cases that are not suitable for young listeners, and there may also be some explicit language used. Listener discretion is advised. The morning of December 29th, 2005, was gearing up to be a beautiful day in the small rural town of Sawmills, North Carolina. When 49-year-old Emily Anderson got out of bed at 6:30 that morning, it was about 46 degrees out. It was chilly, but no rain or snow. Not that snow is common in this area, nestled in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, but it would have been the rainier part of winter on that day. Snowfall is not common in Sawmills, but you may see a few light snowfalls there each season. As a dairy farmer, Emily would normally be grateful for such clear weather anyway. But as it was shaping up to be a nice day for running errands, which is what she had planned. She put on a cozy Old Navy sweatshirt as she got ready to head out that morning. It was supposed to get up to near 60 degrees later. There was no need for a jacket. That morning, Emily probably tossed back some coffee fast because she was out of the house early, to-do list ready. She was doing the normal errands and tasks necessary to run the dairy farm she owned with her husband, Jerry. The only thing different about that day was a dinner party she and Jerry were attending that evening. Friends of theirs were hosting, and Emily was looking forward to it. She knew her husband was chronically late, so she made a point of reminding him to be on time. That was early in the day when she touched base with him briefly at the farm. The plan was she would meet him at the dinner party later. And when Jerry arrived at the dinner party that evening, he was on time. In fact, he was 30 minutes early. But Emily wasn't there. Jerry called her to see where she was. Her errands shouldn't have taken that long, but Emily didn't pick up. A few hours later, Jerry contacted the Caldwell County Sheriff's Department to report his wife missing. Welcome to episode 221, The Disappearance and Murder of Emily Anderson, Part 1. Emily Young Griffith was born on July 8, 1956 in Lexington, Kentucky, to Dr. and Mrs. Joseph R. Griffith. Her mother, Amanda, had been a Watterson before she married Emily's father. Dr. Griffith was a World War II veteran. According to government documents, he worked for the military as a physician, and at one point, Dr. Griffith was a prisoner of war. But thankfully, he made it back home in the spring of 1945, which is when he and Amanda married and soon began a family. They had 3 kids. Emily was the middle child. She had one older brother named Mike and one younger sister named Dee. They all grew up in Kentucky, just like their parents before them. Although Emily was born in Lexington, she spent most of her childhood 100 miles south in Adair County, Kentucky. The Griffiths moved to Adair County when Dr. Griffith began working at the local health department. The Griffiths lived in a historic 2-story brick house in Columbia. Dr. Griffith was a beloved physician from the health department, and the whole family were strong Adair Countyans with so many friends. Judge Ann Melton was friends with both Griffith sisters and became blood sisters with the girls, pricking their fingers and touching them together. Dee said we were blood sisters forever after that, she said. The oldest, Mike Griffith, was a prankster but excellent student who grew up to be a veterinarian, an animal lover like his sister. Dee, short for Adelia, became a second-grade school teacher. The Griffiths seemed to have lived a charmed life. In the 1970s, Emily attended Adair County High School. She was briefly on the drill team, but her friends and classmates remembered her more for her sense of humor, quick smile, and infectious laugh. Even after Emily graduated from high school in 1974, her laughter would continue to be one of her most defining traits. In the 1980s, she lived in Corbin, Kentucky. There, she met a woman who had become a lifelong friend. Her name was Patricia Thorpe. Emily and Pat worked together at an optometrist's office. Pat told the Hickory Daily Record, The best times were when she was in the car with me and my daughter, and I would deliberately get them both tickled, and then you'd have two snorters in the car. The more they snorted, the more they laughed. It was hilarious. More than once I've had to pull off the road because I would be laughing so hard at the two of them I couldn't drive. Emily also had a fantastic singing voice. Pat said Emily would call her every year on her birthday. When she picked up the phone, Emily would sing happy birthday to her sweet friend. Emily, who was a pretty devout Christian, also sang in her church's choir. And she also taught Sunday school and vacation Bible school. Those who knew Emily said she was a loving woman. She cared deeply for her friends and family. She is described as witty and warm in her obituary. She was known as Annie M. to her 6 nieces and nephews and 4 great-nieces and nephews. I love that, like Annie M. from The Wizard of Oz. Emily was also loved by her friends as such a caring and compassionate woman. She was the kind of friend who would drive hours to attend the funeral of the parent of one of her friends. She had lost her own parents just a year apart from each other when she was 23. That's still so young. I am positive that colored her beautiful empathy for the rest of her life. Another friend said of Emily, she loved everyone for what she saw in them and made us feel as if she was honored to be in our presence. Emily was also a member of the American Red Cross. She donated blood regularly, and she helped clean up the damage in the wake of the 1997 tornado that ripped through Cane Valley, Kentucky. Emily brought breakfast for the other volunteers. Pat described Emily as a trusting soul who never saw the bad in anyone. But Emily wasn't just kind to people. She had a big soft spot for animals, too. It was fairly common for Emily to take in strays. And she was a huge fan of the beach. She loved to just sit and watch the water. She found the waves soothing. Emily married for the first time in July of 1973 when she was only 17 years old. He was 19. But the couple didn't last long, and Emily remarried in August of 1979 when she was 23, about the time when she lost her parents. This husband was about 6 years older than her. Emily seemed to falter in the relationship and marriage department. It happens. Some people are just unlucky in love, but she kept on trying. According to her attorney, Emily was married 2 more times before she met Jerry Anderson, her final husband, in the late 1990s. Jerry Lee Anderson was born in 1960. Like Emily, Jerry was also from Kentucky. We don't know much about his childhood, but he was a dairy farmer when he and Emily met. Around 1996, Jerry moved to North Carolina. He managed a growing dairy farm there with approximately 500 heads of cattle. The dairy farm, which was called Carolina Holsteins, was located in Sawmills, North Carolina. Jerry was described by some who knew him as talkative, nice, and kind, but others said he wasn't overly friendly. I get the feeling that Jerry didn't express a lot of emotion. He was described more as hardworking and driven. Some said work was his life, so a serious man. Before Emily, Jerry had been married 2 other times. He had a son with his first wife, named Matt, born in 1993. Around the year 2000, Jerry and Emily got married. Jerry was 40 and Emily was 44. We don't know much about their private life, whether it was always the plan or not, but they never had children together, though Matt did live with them some over the years. With the help of some fellow investors, Jerry was able to purchase the Carolina Holsteins dairy farm. Now he was the owner and operator. And after Emily married Jerry, she also had a wide range of responsibilities. But she was especially good at handling the young calves. Dykes Wilson, whose family previously owned Carolina Holsteins, told the Charlotte Observer, "She'd get out there and wrestle them cows and give them shots." Over the course of about 5 years, Jerry and Emily became very involved in the local sawmills community. They were both devout Christians who attended Dry Ponds Baptist Church regularly. And they would assist in church events like ice cream socials. In a small town like this, where everyone knew everybody, the townspeople were aware of who Emily and Jerry were, even if they didn't know them personally. But although Emily and Jerry were newer to the area than some locals, they were still fairly well known and had made many friends. They made a point to socialize in their community, and they were well liked. That's why when Emily went missing, the town of Sawmills was shocked and rallied to try and help find her. On Wednesday, December 28, 2005, Emily got her hair done. She told her stylist she wanted colored freshly before a dinner party she and Jerry were going to the next evening on Thursday. So, on Wednesday, Emily had her roots touched up with some blonde highlights. Then, on that Thursday, Emily's day began like any other. As I said in the beginning, by 6:30 a.m. she was up and ready to run errands. As I'm sure you'd guess, like any farmer, Jerry was up before the sun and ready to hit the farm by 6:30 himself. First, she stopped by the grocery store for a couple items, and the clerk noticed that Emily's hair was different, lighter, and also that Emily was more dressed up than usual. Instead of her usual farm work clothes, she was wearing khakis, brown loafers, and had tucked in her shirt. When the grocer asked her why she looked so nice, Emily replied that she was just running errands that day. By 7 a.m., she had purchased a new pair of work gloves from Sawmills Hardware. It was owned by Tim and Jenny Wilson, the couple who were having the dinner party that evening. After chatting with Tim, Emily headed out to the farm to drop off the gloves. While there, she also spoke to Jerry. She made a point of fussing at Jerry to be on time for the dinner party. After that, she traveled about 8 miles to Lenore, North Carolina. She got there at about 8:15 a.m. and paid a bill at Martin Marietta Materials. Then, she was supposed to go to Sam's Club in the nearby town of Hickory. But that's where her trail ends. We know she never made it to Sam's Club. By 6 o'clock that evening, Jerry was at Tim and Jenny's house for the dinner party. He had made sure he was there before 6, since Emily had specifically warned him about being late. He was on time, but Emily wasn't there, which was strange, if not alarming yet. He called his wife's cell phone to see what was going on, but she didn't pick up. So he finished dinner with their friends, and then he went home. Jenny Wilson also tried calling Emily and left her a couple of messages. Now it was becoming alarming, because Emily was known to live by her phone. You gotta remember, this was 2005, and while people had cell phones, they weren't the mini computers we are obsessed with today. The first iPhone was released in 2007. Not everyone used a cell phone regularly, but Emily had hers clipped to her belt. You also gotta remember, she didn't just need it for work. Her family lived in Kentucky. Her best friend lived in New Jersey. And she liked to talk to the people she loved often. So she was a dedicated phone chatter. By 8 p.m., Jerry still had not heard from his wife, so he drove about 8 minutes to the nearest police station in Granite Falls. He asked if his wife had been reported in an accident. He worried he needed to file a missing persons report. The communications employee he first talked to said he was calm and didn't seem too concerned. At just before 10 p.m., a Caldwell County Sheriff's deputy arrived at Jerry's home. That's when 49-year-old Emily Griffith Anderson was officially reported missing. Search for Emily began immediately. A BOLO was issued for her truck, her description passed out, and the tough phone calls to friends and family were made. She drove a white 2000 Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck. She had been driving it when she vanished, and it was nowhere to be found. Local authorities used helicopters to try to find her truck. The Dry Ponds Baptist Church passed out more than 1,200 flyers with Emily's photo on them. They held prayer services dedicated to her safe return. And their church letterboard read, "Please pray for Emily Anderson and her family." Emily's disappearance left Sawmills residents scared and confused. Reverend Rick Krause from Emily's church told the Charlotte Observer, "I am as mystified as anyone else. That doesn't happen in this area. This small community we have, everybody trusts everybody. It's been an eye-opener to people here that this could happen here." But then most small-town folks will tell you that. Sawmills is 6.3 square miles with a commanding view of the Appalachian Mountains. Incorporated in 1988, it's called the biggest little town in the foothills, with around 5,000 residents. The Town of Sawmills website touts it as having safer streets as a bedroom community to the big cities around it. But actually, the crime rate is 15% higher than the national average. It has its good areas and its not so good areas. I'm not trying to crap on Sawmills, but just wanted to give you a fair look. Anyway, despite the best efforts of those who looked for Emily, no one had a clue where she was. No one knew if she had left of her own volition, or if something worse had happened. For nearly 10 days, Emily's case grew colder and colder. Then at 12:30 p.m. on Saturday, January 7th, 2006, an unknown man called a Waffle House in Duncan, South Carolina. The anonymous caller said that the white pickup truck in the parking lot of a hotel behind Waffle House was connected to a North Carolina missing persons case. The caller said that someone should check it out. So a Duncan police officer arrived at the Waffle House just off Interstate 85 and ran the truck's tags and realized that Caldwell County was looking for this exact vehicle. It was Emily's truck. Initially, this discovery led to more questions than answers. The Duncan Waffle House and the quality and parking lot her truck was found in were more than 100 miles away from where Emily was last seen. It wasn't even the same state. Caldwell County authorities decided to tow Emily's truck back to North Carolina. There, they searched the vehicle. When they pried open the toolbox compartment in the truck bed, they found Emily. Her body was stuffed face down in the toolbox in her own truck bed. It was clear that Emily had been shot to death. Emily Griffith Anderson's funeral was 4 days later at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, January 11th, 2006. Her service was held at the Dry Ponds Baptist Church. Grissom Funeral Home held a memorial service the next day, Thursday, at 3 p.m. at the Cane Valley Christian Church in Columbia, Kentucky, back in Emily's home state. In lieu of flowers, her family asked for donations to be sent to the Red Cross or Humane Society. A private burial ceremony for the family was held not long after. Emily's obituary noted that she was survived by her husband Jerry, stepson Matt, as well as her older brother Dr. Mike Griffith and younger sister Dee Watson. Her 6 nieces and nephews were also named, as well as her 4 great-nieces and nephews. Her headstone reflects her special family relationship as beloved aunt. It reads, Annie M. Emily Young Griffith, without her married name. The epitaph below cherishes Emily's memorable laughter. It reads, Take time to laugh. It is the music of the soul. She was buried in the Cane Valley Cemetery in Cane Valley, Kentucky. Before Emily was buried, an autopsy was conducted as the formal investigation into her murder got underway. The medical examiner confirmed that Emily had died from 2 gunshot wounds. 1 bullet had entered her back to the left of her spine. It tore through her ribs, a lung, and her heart before exiting through her upper chest. The second bullet had entered the left side of Emily's abdomen. It passed through her ribs, spleen, a kidney, and her spine. Then it exited through her right lower back. Emily had also suffered multiple abrasions. Above both eyes, on the bridge of her nose, her left cheek, her chin, her right hand, and her right knee. Her Old Navy sweatshirt had holes from the bullets. And there was dirt and grass in the bottom of the toolbox near Emily's face and hands. The items in Emily's pockets included her damaged cell phone, $30, a pocket knife, and a set of keys. Later, concerns were raised about why the authorities hadn't found Emily's body before moving her truck more than 100 miles back to North Carolina. After all, who knows what evidence was lost during that trip? Anything can fly off at 70+ miles per hour on a highway. The lieutenant on the scene claimed that he hadn't seen any blood in the truck bed when they started their journey from the Waffle House. I'm going to go ahead and simply question why the truck wasn't searched in South Carolina. This was a missing persons case, not just a stolen vehicle case. I would think any law enforcement officer would or should know the importance of blood and trace evidence, or any kind of evidence, really, in a victim's vehicle. I mean, hell, there could have been a damn ransom note in the glove box. Anything. But Duncan, South Carolina is an even smaller town than Sawmills, with a crime rate 21% lower than the national average. So maybe local PD just weren't accustomed to this kind of crime. I guess it's not surprising that they just called Caldwell County in North Carolina to deal with their own case. And I guess they left it up to Caldwell County to call in the feds if they wanted to. Emily and her truck were taken across state lines. That easily makes it a federal case. I guess unless you believe she was dead before she was taken over state lines. Later, an SBI agent working with the FBI was said to have been consulted. According to an investigating officer explaining to the Charlotte Observer, quote, "The vehicle was locked. There was no odor coming from it. It was clean as a whistle, though it did have a flat front tire." But interestingly, by the time law enforcement arrived at their headquarters, Emily's blood pooled underneath the toolbox. Later on in court, jurors could clearly see her dried blood in crime scene photos. So I'm calling bullshit on this clean as a whistle crap. I don't think they looked. Local officers ran the plates and called it into Caldwell. And perhaps they wouldn't have been given clearance to search it anyway. But I still find that really troubling because, again, this was a missing persons case. What if Emily had been alive, bound and gagged in that toolbox? Police show up, she hears them and thanks God. Now she is saved, and no one searches the truck. I mean, I know that didn't happen, but it could have. That's why this feels like such a serious mistake to me. Then Caldwell County showed up and decided to tow it home before searching it. That's an even bigger mistake than local Duncan officers made. Caldwell knew they were investigating a missing person from their community. How could they not search that truck? That truck should have been treated as a crime scene, carefully searched for clues about Emily's whereabouts, and then given to forensic investigators to comb through. If they had done this, she would have been found, and surely the truck would have been investigated properly rather than towed back to Caldwell. But who knows? They may have still made that choice. Immediately after Emily's body was discovered, law enforcement officers told the Charlotte Observer that the case was wide open for suspects. They had no clear ideas about who had killed Emily. I know what you're thinking. Emily was a married woman, so we know her husband Jerry was the first suspect. But when Emily was still missing, Jerry had provided the authorities with a statement. That statement detailed his exact whereabouts on Thursday, December 29th, the day Emily went missing. For the most part, Jerry's time appeared to be accounted for. Jerry claimed that he had gotten out of bed at 4:30 a.m. Then he went for a walk before getting ready for work. He arrived at the dairy farm at about 6:30 a.m., right about the time that Emily was getting out of bed. Then, Jerry said that he had a quick meeting with his employees. Later that morning, Jerry said he saw Emily briefly. He said she gave him a list of items that she needed, and then she reminded Jerry not to be late for their 6 o'clock dinner party. Then, he said she left to go finish her errands. I do wonder what was on the list she gave him, since she was doing errands herself. A to-do list? He was the boss at the farm. A honey-do list? Maybe. Details like this bother me. Anyway, as his wife went about her day of errands, Jerry said he checked his emails and read an online newspaper. At 11:15 a.m., he said that he left the farm. After that, he ran into his neighbor, Tony Ramsey. They were both at the Hickory Home and Garden store. Tony would later verify that this was true. He specifically remembered their conversation. Tony was trying to get the things he needed to fix his lawnmower. He had been having ongoing issues with it. He remembered Jerry said, "I guess Santa Claus didn't bring you a new lawnmower, and you have to fix the other one." Next, Jerry said he called Emily. He asked her to pick up oil filters for their tractors. After that, he ate lunch at Al's Diner at about 12:15 p.m. Then he went to the Granite Falls post office. According to Jerry, he was back at the farm by 1:15 p.m., and he stayed at the farm for the rest of the afternoon. Jerry said he was working on fixing a broken tractor. At approximately 5:15 p.m., he said he went to get gas. That's when he saw his friend Walter Moore. Walter would later say this was accurate too. Ultimately, the only time that Jerry was unaccounted for was for a few hours in the afternoon. And that's when Jerry claimed that he was working on the dairy farm as he usually would be. Before Emily's body was discovered, Jerry had also taken a 3-question polygraph test. The first question of the test was, "Did you have anything to do with Emily's disappearance?" Jerry responded no. The second question was, "Right now, do you know where Emily is?" And he said no. The last question was, "Do you know for sure where Emily is right now?" And Jerry said once more, no. According to the polygraph machine, Jerry was telling the truth when responding to all 3 questions. But keep in mind, polygraph tests are notoriously unreliable. We all know that the results are rarely admissible in court unless the prosecution and defense both agree to allow the results to be entered as evidence. Even then, many courts do not allow it. But anyway, all this is to say that when Emily's body was found, Jerry wasn't necessarily a suspect, but I'm sure he remained a person of interest, especially since investigators noted that Jerry's reaction to learning about his wife's death was odd. According to court documents, Jerry had shown very little emotion, and at one point, he even laughed. But people react to trauma differently and grieve differently. It's impossible to predict how a person will react to a horrific situation, but I'm willing to bet most investigators either have gut feelings or they've seen enough reactions to feel confident about their own assessments. And others would later testify that Jerry did cry about Emily's loss. These people even noted that they distinctly remembered Jerry crying because of how rare it was. He wasn't known to be a demonstrably emotional man. Around the time investigators found Emily's body, Jerry told the Charlotte Observer, "There's comfort that she's home now. It's not the way I wanted her home, but I'm glad she's home, and I'll deal with the rest later. She's safe." She's dead, sir, not safe. Yeah, quotes can be taken out of context, and I know what he means. But would you really say your murdered wife was home safe? That was just weird. But Jerry was kind of different, very dry, kind of all business. In some ways, it probably hurt how he was perceived. In others, his friends said he was the same old Jerry. Regardless, it seemed that Caldwell County investigators weren't pointing a finger at Jerry yet. Or at least they weren't in the beginning. Then they spoke to Emily's friends and family. Because although Emily and Jerry ran a thriving business together, their marriage was not as successful as their dairy farm. For about 3 years, their relationship had been strained. And 2 years before, in 2003, the Andersons had separated for about 6 weeks. During that time, Emily stayed in Kentucky. Most of Emily's family still lived there. We're not sure what caused Emily and Jerry to take this break, but per court documents, Jerry had, at some unknown time, found cards addressed to Emily from a man named Bill. And someone, though we're not sure who, sent Emily flowers on at least one occasion. But they evidently made up, because eventually Emily returned to her North Carolina home with Jerry, and their married life seemingly continued on as usual. But 2 years later, in the fall of 2005, Emily and Jerry were on the rocks again. A few days before Thanksgiving that year, Emily visited her older brother Mike in Nicholasville, Kentucky. Emily told Mike that she was considering leaving Jerry. She said that Jerry overworked and bullied her. He belittled her in front of their employees. But Emily's brother urged her to stay with Jerry, at least for a little while longer. He thought he had a good reason. Emily and Jerry were planning on moving to Mountain City, Tennessee. There, they planned to build a new cattle feeding operation called High Mountain Holsteins. This new farm was going to bring in more money than their dairy farm in North Carolina. And at this new farm, Emily would be a part owner. She wouldn't just be working for Jerry, she would be a partner. Mike advised Emily to wait until she was an owner of this new farm to divorce Jerry. That way, she would get a larger settlement. According to the Charlotte Observer, Mike said, "Get as much as you can out of it." I don't think Mike was particularly vindictive toward his brother-in-law. He just wanted what was best for his sister. Though Mike would later state that he thought it was weird that Jerry never went to any of Emily's family functions. He seemed to pretty much stay away from his in-laws. Shortly after speaking with her brother about a potential divorce, Emily called her friend, Pat Thorpe. I mentioned her earlier in the episode. Emily and Pat met when they worked together in Corbin, Kentucky. By this time, Pat had moved to New Jersey. Despite living multiple states away, the friends still talked on the phone regularly. That's how Pat knew that Emily and Jerry's relationship had been going downhill. According to Pat, Emily often complained that Jerry was verbally and emotionally abusive towards her. She told the Charlotte Observer, "I talked to her many times when she was in tears because of things he had said to her. He had told her basically that she wasn't smart enough to do anything really." Pat did clarify that Emily never mentioned Jerry physically abusing her. Still, it's clear that Emily was very unhappy in her marriage and felt emotionally abused by Jerry. And since her brother seemed to be worrying about Emily's finances, going so far as advising her to wait to get out of the marriage until she was co-owner of their business, maybe Jerry was financially abusive. He held the purse strings. Later, it was found he even ran a credit check on his wife. He was pissy that he found a Victoria's Secret credit card that he didn't know about, especially since Emily was known only to wear long johns. So, the Saturday after that Thanksgiving, on November 26th, 2005, Emily called Pat, told her that she had finally gotten the courage to leave and divorce Jerry. Pat told the Charlotte Observer, "She told me she was going to contact a lawyer, that she had made her mind up. She said, 'I have to get out.'" Emily also explained to Pat that she was waiting to tell Jerry about the divorce. She wanted to be out of the house before she let him know she was leaving him. She was afraid of how Jerry would respond. Concerned for her friend, Pat asked Emily, "Is it really that bad?" And she said Emily said, "Yes, it is." Following this, Emily reached out to another friend for a divorce attorney recommendation. She was referred to divorce lawyer Rachel LeClaire. During Emily's consultation with Miss LeClaire, she said her relationship with Jerry had reached a tipping point. Emily said that Jerry had a bad temper. She claimed he would treat her like a child or a dog. When she approached Jerry about his disrespectful behavior, she said that Jerry would ignore her. He would even go so far as taking out his hearing aids. Without hearing aids, Jerry was about 70% deaf. And she said she and her husband hadn't shared a bed since late October or early November of 2005. Just like Emily's brother, Miss LeClaire suggested that Emily stay with Jerry until they had started their new farm in Tennessee. But Emily was adamant that she couldn't wait that long to end things with her husband. And all of this was just a month before she went missing. Pat spoke to Emily one last time on December 26th. Their conversation wasn't long, and she said that Emily didn't reveal any information pertinent to the investigation. But, in an interesting turn of events, Jerry actually called Pat on January 3rd. This would have been while Emily was missing, but before her body was found. Jerry and Pat spoke for 72 minutes. During their call, Jerry acknowledged that his marriage had not been going well. He told Pat he was pretty sure Emily had left him for another man, which surprised Pat. While Emily had complained at length about her marriage, she had never told Pat that she was having an affair. But now, multiple people could confirm that Emily Anderson wanted to leave her husband and was making plans to just a month before she disappeared and was found murdered. Equipped with this new information about Emily and Jerry's marriage, law enforcement held a news conference on January 9, 2006. Sheriff Gary Clark said that he was confident Emily's case was solvable. He said it again on January 15th in a phone interview with Fox News. He would later appear on national TV on a Fox station. By January 20th, the authorities got a search warrant for Jerry's home and the farm. Less than a week later, on January 26th, investigators searched his properties again. Following that second search, an investigator told the Charlotte Observer that they had found very compelling evidence, but they wouldn't share what that evidence was. Not yet, anyway. That same officer later said during a news conference, "This story's only beginning as far as I'm concerned." Shortly after that second search, employees from Jerry's dairy farm contacted the authorities. These employees told investigators that they were scared of Jerry Anderson. They were worried he would harm them. Law enforcement would not disclose why these employees were worried or even how many employees had reached out. But this concern caused the authorities to move quickly to arrest Jerry, even though the investigation was ongoing. And they publicly said they were still open to other suspects. So on Friday, January 27th, 47-year-old Jerry Lee Anderson was arrested in his home just after midnight. The Caldwell County Sheriff's Department charged Jerry with first-degree murder. He was held in the Caldwell County Jail without bond. During his arrest, Jerry fully cooperated with the authorities, and he requested a court-appointed defense attorney right away. He was indicted by a grand jury on first-degree murder 2 weeks after his arrest. But a few days after Jerry was arrested, the local newspapers began reporting that Jerry had taken out a life insurance policy on Emily. Initially, the sheriff's department would not confirm how much that life insurance policy was worth. And since the search warrants and affidavits related to this case were sealed from public viewing, there was no way for anyone to find out. So, the Charlotte Observer and the Associated Press requested that Caldwell County unseal those documents. They had questions that they believed these documents could answer. Like, what witnesses had the authorities talked to so far? And what evidence had investigators found on Jerry's properties? The prosecuting lawyers were opposed to this. They argued this information, among other things, might bias the community of potential jurors. But the presiding Caldwell County judge believed that the court shouldn't put its judgment ahead of the public ability to understand the legal system, he said. And on Monday, February 20th, 2006, that same judge unsealed 60 pages of documents. The information within those pages caused an absolute uproar. On the morning of December 29th, the day that Emily went missing, several people had seen Emily and Jerry together at the dairy farm. They saw the couple go into a tree-filled area behind the property. Jerry had driven his tractor, and Emily had followed behind him in her truck. Shortly after, multiple witnesses heard gunshots come from the same area where Jerry and Emily had gone. Then, Jerry emerged, alone. Afterward, Jerry asked some of his employees to power wash his tractor, a task that, according to Jerry's employees, he had never asked them to do before. During the authorities' investigation, they found traces of fluid inside the tractor. Samples of this fluid were sent to the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab for DNA analysis. While the crime lab was able to confirm that yes, this fluid was blood, the samples were too small for DNA testing. They couldn't even tell if it was human blood. It may have come from an animal. But this didn't mean Jerry was in the clear. In fact, per these court documents, he had exhibited even more concerning behaviors. Sometime after December 29th, Jerry asked an employee to replace the oil filters for some tractors. Those filters he had asked his wife to buy the last day she was seen. The employee was supposed to write that day's date on the oil filters, but Jerry told them to put down 12/29/2005, even though that day had since passed. Jerry also wanted this employee to tell anyone who asked that he was working with his employees between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. on December 29th. And Jerry also wanted the employee to say that they had both been working on changing the oil filters between 1:30 p.m. and 3 p.m. that same day. Then, Jerry hid the old tractor oil filters that had been replaced. During the two searches of Jerry's properties, investigators found these discarded oil filters in a nearby drainage ditch and manure pile. You can imagine how damning this information was. Jerry, whose wife was actively seeking a divorce, was seen going into a secluded location with her. Then gunshots were heard coming from that area. Afterward, he had allegedly asked his employees to lie about his whereabouts from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. Those afternoon hours were the exact same hours that Jerry had been unaccounted for during that statement he had provided to the authorities. Also, Emily's phone record showed that she had not used her cell phone at all since December 28th, the day before the last witness in town saw her. And that's not the end of it. Also revealed in these unsealed court documents, Jerry had recently taken out a $1.5 million life insurance policy on Emily. This newer policy was in addition to a previously established life insurance policy for $3 million. In total, Jerry would receive approximately $4.5 million in the event of Emily's death. In 2024 dollars, that's almost $7 million. And as if that wasn't enough, Jerry had also obtained his passport on January 5th. For context, that would have been a week after Emily went missing and only 2 days before her body was found on January 7th. Dude, come on. I guess you could see this as an innocent man with nothing to hide, or as a man about to flee the country. Most people would think the worst. The realization that dairy farmer Jerry Anderson might have killed his wife caused chaos in this rural North Carolina community. A neighbor who lived across the street from Jerry's dairy farm told the Charlotte Observer, "The whole incident has been difficult for our entire community. There are thousands of unanswered questions right now, and we're patiently waiting for the answers." Some of the biggest questions were, had Emily truly intended to divorce Jerry? Did Jerry have time to get to Duncan, South Carolina that afternoon? And why on God's green earth did Jerry get a passport so soon after Emily's disappearance? He had to have known how bad that would look. Local residents were split in their opinions. Some stood by Jerry. They couldn't believe that he would harm his wife. Jerry was their friend and neighbor, a fellow churchgoer. They couldn't fathom that Jerry, their Jerry, could do this. One member of the Dry Ponds Baptist Church told reporters, "I believe in Jerry until he tells me that he killed Emily." Which, wow, okay, but wouldn't you at least want him to legally clear his name? And one neighbor of Jerry's said, 90% of the people around here think he's innocent. Anyone who knows Jerry doesn't think he did it. But there were plenty of other people who thought Jerry did kill his wife. The manager of a local grocery store in Delhi, Jean Bristol, told the press after Jerry's arrest, "I think it's more of a sigh of relief. I know it is for a lot of the women." And another Dry Ponds Baptist Church member said she wasn't shocked in the slightest about the news about Jerry. She told the Hickory Daily Record that he never showed no tears, no emotions. It's a real shame. For months and months, Jerry's innocence, or lack thereof, was a hot-button topic in the Sawmills area. One local told the Charlotte Observer, "If the paper comes out with an article about Jerry on the front of it, It will be sold out in 2 minutes. If something like this happened in Charlotte, it'd just be an ordinary thing. But when it happens in a small community like this, it just throws you off center. And that is the stopping point for part 1, folks. As this started as a 1-episode case, part 2 will come out pretty quickly in the next couple of days. I appreciate your patience. Some cases like these drag you down rabbit holes, and you keep going, and suddenly it's 14,000 words, which is crazy. That's almost as long as a feature-length film. And I know a lot of you love 2-parters anyway. Jerry's trial and more details about the investigation will be covered in the next episode. This case is a wild ride, with a twist I didn't see coming. So stick with me. It'll be worth it. Southern Fried True Crime is hosted and produced by me, Erica Kelley. Today's episode was researched and written by me and Andrea Marshbank. As usual, any editorial comments and opinions are my own. Southern Fried's original music is by Rob Harrison of Gamma Radio, and the original graphic artist by Coley Horner. Today's episode was edited and mixed by Sarah Wendell of VW Sound LLC and Erica Kelley. Thank you to Sarah and Christen for suggesting today's case. If you have any case suggestions, please go to my website, southernfriedtruecrime.com, and click on the listener suggestion tab, or email sftcresearch@gmail.com. This is the best way for me to get those little-known cases y'all always send me. Please remember that I do not accept suggestions on social media private messages, but please do come join our Facebook group, Southern Fried True Crime Fans Discussion Group, where we swap recipes, worship Dolly Parton, and share memes. We do, of course, discuss true crime, not just Southern Fried, but all kinds. But it is still very much a Southern lifestyle group. Our group is a safe and fun corner of Facebook, and by God, we mean it when we say no shit ass is allowed. It's not just a motto, it's how we run the group. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe, and please tell a friend or rate and review. I'm on all large platforms like iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, and YouTube. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. Y'all take care.